Audio. Okay, here we go. Hello, anybody who was potentially waiting already. Let me just get everything set up. That's live, that's live. Both are synced up. That's already muted. Dismiss that. Get the Google Earth substitute ready. Oh crap, I've got to turn all this off. Oops, no, it's that arrow. And turn Epic Pen on. If anybody is at any point looking for the software that you can use to draw on your screen like this, whether during streaming or just on your own for fun, or during like I don't know a video call with somebody. Epic Pen is the best free one that you can get. And while we wait for people to start arriving, oh, four already. That was fast. We'll have our first few waiting lobby minutes of things nobody asked for. So, since it's been a few weeks, another of Max Ogier's music recommendations is On Écrit or On Écrit sur le mur, the version by Raffi specifically. So if you search, as long as you actually put Raffi in there, then it should be the top one that will look like this. But so really decent. Apart from just good sounding, it's also a decently meaningful French song. And I'll also show, where is it? Images. Yeah, I moved everything into images. So Dream War, official. So I got the completed version. This is the first actual like scene from Dream War, from the very ending of the pilot episode that Anya finished for me. The artist who's doing the visual stuff for it over in Belarus. This is the very first actual scene. All the other stuff was character concept art up to this point, uh, like Andim, his wife Elem, Mepria, and where'd I put you two? There they are. And Ash and Ban. This is the first actual scene. This the would be the very end of episode one, or the pilot episode. Would basically be something like this for the last couple seconds before it switches to credits. This is the conning tower of a post World War One, early 1920s era equivalent cruiser, and that's one of the smoke funnels, some nice billowing black coal slash early 1900s unrefined fuel oil smoke as they try to get away and run this world equivalent of the Strait of Gibraltar at flank speed to avoid getting intercepted after they just sunk uh, not Spain or an evil incarnation of Spain's vessel, because they were firing on a fleeing the Spanish vessel was firing on a fleeing refugee ship. But that's it. And see, yep, there we go. Everybody starts dropping. Like I said, that's what you get. That's what you get when you show things that you care about. And yes, hello, Joe. I saw you. Okay, so let's see. Uh, yeah, there is supposedly, and I have to correct Epic Pen now because it deactivated itself. There we go. Let me go over here. Let me come here. And okay, it's fixed. So supposedly, things might be coming to an end. There is supposedly, I'm just going to put quotation marks and not bother writing the word. There is supposedly negotiations ongoing. At first, it was just the U.S. claiming it. Iran initially denied it, but then a few hours after that, they retracted that and said, actually, yeah, there is. Uh, Israel initially said they don't care, but then a few hours after that, they said, actually, yeah, sure, go ahead and do it. So, presumably, if it is real and it does stop, just like after the 12-day war last year stopped, they're going to, I guess, keep all their focus on just uh, carpet bombing Lebanon for the time being. But while everything is supposedly going on, negotiation wise, all the airstrikes and everything have continued, and Iran has continued launching Shahed drones and ballistic missiles. Initially, the demands that were put forward were obviously the no nukes, uh, no more missiles of any kind, and cut off of proxy groups. And it looks like the no missiles of any kind part has been dropped. That was what allowed for some positivity and wiggle room because, the placing demands on a country and saying that they just can't have like weapons altogether is kind of absurd. No one's ever going to agree to that. Uh, Supposedly, the whoever is actually in charge now, because the interim, like cobbled together leadership that took over after the initial decapitation strikes, they were killed a few days ago in renewed strikes. So whoever has been rushed into power now uh, has agreed to the no nukes thing and to no nuclear development at all of any kind. But that part, the no nuclear like research or no nuclear reactors, even for power plants, that portion of it, they agreed to specifically for 5 years. And if this comes to fruition, there's a specific reason why the 5 year portion would have been pushed from the US's angle, or specifically from the current administration in the US's angle. See, what does 5 years get you? You get the remaining 2 years of Trump, and then you get the first 3 years of the next incoming president, who is uh, almost certainly going to be on the other side of the aisle. And the Republicans have kind of acknowledged and conceded this point at this point, based on how screwed they managed to make everything in just the first year and a half. So the kind of uh, election there's literally domestic election strategy behind this. If this does come about for the 5 years hold off thing, and that would be that if Iran does start pursuing nukes again and does actually hold up to the 5 year agreement thing, it would end up, that 5 years would end up coming after the first 3 years of the next president, who's likely going to end up being Democrat, which would mean it would be in the final year or in the election year. And if said president, whoever is next, has to do anything, start bombing Iran again, then all the negative fallout, all this Strait of Hormuz stuff repeating would happen to that president in 2032 or 2031 during the run up to the 2032 election, which would then guarantee that we keep going back and forth on this seesaw of 4 years of one, 4 years of the other. We've seemingly exited the long period of roughly 60 years uh, post FDR, once the or 70 years post FDR, once the 2-term limit was installed. Uh, Majority of the presidents were 2 terms. That became just the normal. We seem to have slipped into now, after Trump won, we seem to have slipped into what's probably going to be a pattern for the next little bit of time of only having 1-term presidents and swinging back and forth for quite a while. As the world's going to be in a bit of upheaval for at least the next decade or two, and the that always has economic consequences, and that always blame-wise ends up falling on the president. So the American electorate is going to keep swinging back and forth while everything goes on until a new post peak of prosperity normal starts to settle in afterwards. But anyways, yeah. So theoretically, there's an agreement being made that will start with a 1 month ceasefire, quote unquote, that Israel and Iran specifically will disregard towards each other, just like with the ceasefire that ended the 12-day war last summer. So they almost certainly will keep shooting at each other if this thing does come to fruition, but everybody knows that they're going to do that. So that's kind of baked into the whole policy, anyways. But so the you can't have missiles at all, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles portion. That was portion number 2 of the initial demands. That's been dropped. So that's part of probably what has encouraged or allowed the round 3 of makeshift Iranian fill the gaps government to be willing to start agreeing to this. The no nukes thing has been supposedly split in half into we'll put NK for actual nukes, as in the weapons. They have supposedly agreed to that, but the no nuclear anything like reactors research, that has been dropped and replaced with a 5-year pause agreement, which whoever is now uh, replacement in charge after the last guys died a few days ago in Iran has apparently agreed to the 5-year portion. And the no proxy groups thing, no specific word about that. I would think that's probably been dropped because that would kind of be really impossible to enforce, anyways. And Iran also offered, to the surprise of no one because you knew this was coming, Iran also offered to allow foreign investment and oil companies to do stuff and rework things in the Iranian oil and gas industry. So you all, hopefully, especially if you watch me by choice, you all knew that part was coming inevitably. But so that's being discussed right now. We'll see if that actually comes about. Part of it also might have been the incoming pressure on Harg Islands of the potential of the potential of both in a seizure of Karg Island, thus cutting Iran off from oil and gas exports, and thus their only real remaining source of funding, along with other things along their islands along the Strait of Hormuz, which would sever their actual like say so in the control of it. So another reason you can add to why they would probably be agreeing would be that if they agree to this now, they don't let either of those happen, then internally for their own domestic messaging and for their external messaging as well, they can say that they they stood strong and they did not let Iran physically be invaded, and if not giving in to like demands secretly, semi-secretly before any potential coastal stuff along the strait happens, then they can domestically and externally say that they maintained control and no one was able to take it from them. So, in terms of like face-saving presentation, this would definitely be the better option for them because they could very legitimately present this as effectively a win. The only one who does not actually like the idea of what's apparently been agreed to is obviously Netanyahu over here in Israel. But it seems like we might be finally, uh, draw some spikes there. We might be finally pulling on. Let me draw the leash handle thing. Yeah, there you go. And there's the trigger that you use to pull it back. We might finally have reasserted the proper original relationship between our military vassal and the U.S. and the Pentagon. Might actually be choking back on the leash now, and he's just instead, I guess, going to focus on bulldozing the remains and rubble of Gaza and eventually forcing somebody to take the Palestinians, along with continuing with the effectively totally not occupation and annexation, but basically occupation and eventual annexation of southern Lebanon, along with continuing to carpet bomb and level Beirut, which we'll get to some details of in a moment. But yeah, this it would work out for Iran because of all the reasons I mentioned. They can domestically give that a like strongman win, and works out on the U.S.'s part because the factories and stuff were taken out, the nuke sites were taken out, a huge portion of their actual missile stockpile has already been launched, and hundreds more on the ground have been taken out. Leadership's going to be in a bit of a hustle toss up for a while, and also the big thing obviously is that the global oil market returns to normal. Okay, let's see who's here. Uh, yeah, theoretically, that is supposedly Friday is supposedly the big thing. If not, if that doesn't happen, then the U.S. has theoretically threatened to actually just bomb all power plants within the country. To which Iran said then they'll launch ballistic missiles at the power plants and desalination plants of all their surrounding nations. So, not an ideal end for both sides if the thing falls through, and if both sides actually back up those threats if it does fail. but there's also pressure probably from Turkey and Europe to not uh, fully wipe everything, to not keep this going eternally, because they already experienced Syria, which only had a population of like 15 million or so when everything started. So Iran, with a population of 80 something million, neither Turkey nor Europe wants to have a fully collapsed failed state, which would result in this case, millions upon millions, potentially even something like 10 million, like waves of X number of refugees. So they don't want, they are probably pressuring behind the scenes as well because they don't want a repeat of that process. Let me drink some water real quick. And I have to go to my the tax office place tomorrow and get the exact number because I'm gonna owe the IRS I don't know, something like $400. Since if you in the US, in theory, on paper, if you make less than 12K, it used to be less than 14, but under the Trump tax cuts, the cap was lowered so that now uh, even poorer people actually fall into the realm of having to pay taxes. But actually, even if you make less than 12K, like me, last year, I think in total, everything combined, I made like 4,300 maybe. You if you're not traditionally employed, which, YouTube, making graphs, etc., counts as not traditionally employed, then actually you still owe money anyways. And it's something like 9 or 10% usually. So this time I'm probably gonna owe like $400. But that's a random side tangent. Let's see. All right, let's start circling around for the tally as it stands thus far. So, uh, Iran, within Iran, number of deaths from all of this is vaguely likely somewhere around 7K. Iran itself claims only about 1,500 and says that most of them were civilians and that there's barely been any military deaths. US and Israel claim about 15, or actually not, closer to 20,000 now, uh, and say that almost all of those have been military deaths and that there have barely been any civilian casualties. In reality, it's somewhere vaguely between 6 and 7, likely now closer to 7. And it's roughly half and half, 3.5K each, around so. But it's starting to tip up to where it's tipping over to more civilian deaths than military now, since a lot of the strikes are now against, the factories and pro- uh, production infrastructure and stuff, which are military targets, but the people working in the factories are not actually military personnel, obviously. And oops, hold on. What? Are you are you responding to something I was saying, or are you responding to yourself? So that looks like a whole conversation. Yeah, I was gonna show some images for examples of like The now that's Russia. Yeah, like this was one of the factories and assembly sites. There's the before and then the after. You can see it wrecked. This is what modern semi carpet bombing looks like on an actual like facility. There were some other example ones I was gonna show, but they were further back. There were also a couple hundred drones and or missiles taken out on the ground at a few bases as they were getting assembled and were in the process of launching from large fields. Uh, okay, no, that was the headquarters. Where's the base one? Here's one of them. Yeah, so and more munitions falling at the moment, but yeah, giant volcanic billow cloud is the result of hitting a site where uh, many missiles and or drones were assembled at the time, getting ready to launch. Here's view from further away after it had a few hours to grow even bigger. You can see how big it was on the horizon. Yeah, here's more. Yeah, completely level destroyed. This is I guess you call it precision carpet bombing. Basically, this is what we were doing with the B-52s, as in not just dropping like one, two, and three and making holes in the ceiling like what you see back and forth with the Russia-Ukraine war. This is dumping a whole B-52 payload of stuff that all then precisely because it's on a guidance kit falls onto an exact target. Yeah, more example there. Yeah, actually get a full screen of that. Play. I told you to play. Okay, we did clockwise last time, so we'll keep going counterclockwise this time. In Iraq, total total casualties, deaths, etc. thus far are 30 Iraqi security forces or military, we'll put an M. And in Kurdistan, there are two, or sorry, there have been 12 Kurdish security forces casualties so far. And thankfully, only two Iraqi civilians have gotten killed up to this point. And then shifting over through here. Oh, and also uh, 80, maybe close to 100 now of the Islamic Revolution, quote unquote, the various militia groups that belong to Iran within Iraq and Syria. Meanwhile, over here in Lebanon, Israel has reiterated that it is going to do this. It's going to seize this southern portion and finally announced today publicly that it's considering that it shall most likely permanently hold, but not annex southern Lebanon, but will just permanently military hold it for straw some more quotation marks for security. But fighting keeps on going there, and roughly 500 to 600 Hezbollah deaths at this point, and a few dozen IDF, although the IDF is still publicly insisting only two, despite several times announcing additional deaths as just like the normal the normal public patriotic mourning sorrowful mourning announcements where they like post someone's picture and stuff. But on official like tally, they still say that there's only two. Although they've publicly announced at some points more, and also people living in and around Haifa saw military medevac helicopters come back from the southern front a few times and offload more than just one or two bloodied up, mangled bodies. But maybe those guys are perfectly fine for all I know. The leveling of Beirut continues, and we're getting up to around roughly 1,100 random Lebanese civilians killed, mostly in Beirut. As the "We Are Empire" song by Starset quotes, "Dreams like ashes disappear, vaporized into the atmosphere," for the strategic goal of keeping a malaise over Lebanon, keeping it unlivable, and thus continuing to encourage its low and falling further birth rate, already at 1.6, and continuing to encourage outbound migration from Lebanon. Then down in Saudi Arabia, let's see, where are we at? Still only two deaths in Saudi Arabia, two civilians killed at the site across from Ras Tanura. That's when some of the Shahed drones struck that. There were massive explosions. Two of the oil workers got killed. Oman is, where's Oman? Three civilian deaths in Oman, uh, two of which died in the explosions at that one port when some drones struck the marine fuel storage tanks that refuel the cargo ships that come into that port. And another another guy from, I believe, from working at that same port ended up dying later from his injuries. That was a few days ago. The UAE, two military deaths from that helicopter crash because they had a UH-60 Black Hawk that was buzzing around over the Gulf and shooting down the incoming Shahed drones with the M134 door gun. That helicopter ended up going down, and two of the three military personnel on that died, and seven civilians, one of which is one that the UAE actually like was posting a lot of stuff about and was mournful about because uh, his life in the eyes of the Emirati government actually mattered, whereas the other six were some of the slaves, aka the totally free to leave whenever they want, not trapped there and not living in horrific conditions of 20 dudes crammed in a room. Uh, they they're imported Pakistani slash Bangladeshi slash Indian slave labor. Six of the civilian casualties were from among the totally not slaves, so the Emirati government doesn't really care about them. Qatar lost four military personnel in not a drone shooting down helicopter, but just a military transport helicopter that I don't know where it was going, if it was flying from one site in Qatar to another, or if it was flying over to like Saudi Arabia or something. But Qatar has not upkept their vehicles up well, apparently, because shortly into its flight, it had an engine seizure and went into a spin out or a tailspin and went down. And they lost four of their military members on that. Uh, sorry, another one person on that was a member of the Turkish military, and there were also two Turkish civilian contractors on that. So total death toll from that crash was seven. And also, Bahrain has had three civilian casualties. But like the UAE, those were some of the slave labor that got hit when some of the luxury hotels, skyscraper hotels, were struck. Kuwait, where'd I put Kuwait? Kuwait is at four military and four civilian. Kuwait's angry about those because those were Kuwaitis, and they lost four military members during the same ballistic strike where the U.S. lost six in that, or six or seven in that one tactical situation screen room, because them and the four Kuwaiti guys were all in the same room or the same, yeah, the same room, the same building that a ballistic missile warhead hit. And the U.S. has lost 17 service members, 17 actually dead. There's 230 plus that are hospitalized in either Ramstein or back in Bethesda, back on the East Coast. 10 of those are in like still severe critical condition and are probably going to die. So end up actual totals probably going to tip over to 27. The DoD still says only 13 though, because several of those deaths were, like I said, people who ended up dying to secondary causes after like missile and drone strikes. So they didn't actually die in the explosions, but they would not have died if those drones and missiles had not struck. So, on the Maxogear system, you don't get out of that. That still counts as a combat loss. You don't get to just write that off. Let's see. Check on everybody. Oh, okay. Depends. It depends what country you're talking about. In a lot of intelligent countries, like Norway, for example, uh, everything is calculated on the government and employer side and is automatic, and you get like a letter in the Scandinavian countries. You get like an official government letter at the specific time of year saying uh, this was this was what you were taxed. This is how much was taken. Do you agree to this? Does this look right to you, or did we miscalculate? And you can go to the website or mail them back physically if you want to dispute the number if you feel like it. But Norwegians and a lot of the people in Scandinavia and places like Japan that do something similar uh, kind of actually have a civic like society sense and actually care about like national upkeep. So they don't. No one really disputes it, and I mean they don't really get it wrong that frequently, anyways. So yeah, a lot of countries do that more automated. That more like automated calculus burden is taken off of you system, but not in the US because we prefer to do things as stupidly as possible in the US. And also, the US has a large tax accountant industry that's, like many other industries, bribes and lobbies politicians to not change anything. Let's see. Oil prices. So, the market price for oil, the speculative gambling price that finance bros insist is the real value, has dropped because of the supposed peace agreement to only $90. Although the actual physical price being paid for oil upon delivery around the world is still elevated, fluctuating between 130 and 160. At its highest point, it was between 150 and 175, with the highest particular spike sometime during last week, when it hit 173 for a day, I think. As for the current supply situation, uh, if whether or not this actually happens, just as it stands at the moment, you have out of the 17 million that would normally flow out of the Persian Gulf, you do not have an actual 17 million barrel per day deficit. 2.5 million barrels per day are flowing out from Iran, as their domestic consumption has collapsed to only about 600 or 700,000 barrels per day. About 1.5 million are leaving the UAE, partly through the Fujairah port and partly through their regular ports within the Gulf, as they had to divert back from Fujairah because of some damage. But Iran has been allowing specifically Pakistan, India, and China, any oil or gas tankers bound for those nations specifically, to pass through the strait unhindered, and also is at the moment, while the current situation still stands before the peace agreement, is offering to let any tanker going to any country come or go from the Gulf if they pay a one-time fee of $2 million for the tanker. So some oil is leaving the UAE and heading predominantly to India. Iran's oil is heading predominantly to China. About 1.5 million is leaving the UAE. So combined with Iran, that's 4. 17 minus 4 brings the deficit down to 13. You still have between 500,000 and 1 million barrels per day actually getting to leave Kuwait, again, because of the various agreements with Pakistan, India, China, and etc. That tankers are now leaving. So that brings you down, for safety, say 4.5. So that you're down from 17 to 12.5 million barrels per day as the deficit. And then you have the diversion through the Red Sea on Saudi Arabia's part, with their Red Sea port now exporting about 4.5 million barrels per day, uh, versus versus the roughly 500,000 it was exporting pre-war, because it does have to export some, even when it's not being predominantly used, just to keep the things running and lubricated for all intents and purposes. So that's an additional 4 there. That brings you down to a deficit total of 8.5 million barrels per day. But there's been demand destruction around the world because of the high prices. In total, it amounts to, I think, let's see, there's uh, the numbers that I'm aware of, at least from the US, China, Germany, Japan, and others, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million barrels per day of demand loss, that I'm aware of from countries who have actually like given statements, have released post Iran war data about their current demand levels. But a lot of countries just release on the staggered monthly collection thing. So a lot of the data is still from pre-war, from before things began. And the 2.5 to 3 drop is not accounting for Persian Gulf nations, because that would that would be oil that's within here. I'm talking about outside demand, which would be lowering the amount of oil that needs to flow out. So that brings you down to a standing deficit of either 6 or 5.5 million barrels per day. So even outside of the peace agreement thing that may or may not be coming, that is already, thankfully, a drastically reduced deficit situation compared to what it initially was, what was feared would, but and what it was feared would continue to be. Let's see. Uh, Potentially no longer a like actual turnover, as in like Iran is upended and turned into a democracy again. But remember, like all throughout the Cold War and stuff, the the U.S. the Pentagon was willing to tolerate various different governments it didn't like as long as they were acquiesceable to demands when demands were made of them. Like Venezuela's government effectively did not really change after the January 3rd operation. We removed one dude and we killed like 100 of their military personnel, and that was it. And the new lady who took over is still a brutalist autocrat, but she agreed to all of the various uh, oil demands and all the various no more Russian and Chinese interaction demands that we made of her. So if a a new reconsolidated government in Iran that is still uh, like autocratic and oppressive is willing to acquiesce to all of the demands made of them, then from the US's angle, that would be considered acceptable and would be considered quote unquote regime change. Because from the Pentagon's like strategic idea of regime change, what that actually means is switching out a government who won't concede to the demands being placed on them for one that will. Whether the new replacement government is also a brutalist autocratic dictatorship is irrelevant from the strategic sense. The Again, like I said before, the one who has a problem with it and wants a totally collapsed failed state Iran is Israel, but the US seems to actually finally be pulling back on the leash and reasserting itself as the one who has vassal states instead of the one who is starting to act like a vassal state to another much smaller country. But the new current, whoever happens to be in charge in Iran, already agreed to not turn over control of, but to allow outside oil companies and industry to operate in Iran and thus slow roll effectively the oil takeover process in a way that they could they could passively pass off to their domestic audience as not actually happening, and they agreed they agreed to the no nukes thing and probably discreetly no Russia, no China thing, but that's neither here nor there. We'll end up having to see. And like I said, on our end, we dropped the you can't have missiles at all thing because that's kind of really stupid. You like the no nukes thing, yeah, you can keep pressing that, but uh, telling a country you can't even have these regular conventional weapons either is kind of stupid and a non-starter, like not even a radical regime. Even a very malleable regime would still never agree to something like that. So we dropped the you can't have ballistic missiles and cruise missiles part. and the no nuclear research at all, not nuclear weapons, but just no nuclear research at all part, we on our end also turned that into a 5 year suspension that those currently in power in Iran have apparently agreed to. And we made it, or the current U.S. administration made it 5 years for the reasons I specified earlier. Because what do you get in 5 years? The remaining 2 years of Trump go by, and that's 3 years of the next incoming U.S. president, who is most likely going to be from the other side of the aisle, because that's the back and forth seesaw is the time period we've entered into now. So there's a bit of future election strategizing going on with the whole 5 years thing, because then when the moratorium ends, if Iran does abide by it and they suddenly start doing nuclear stuff again in 5 years, then that would be after 3 years of the next incoming likely Democratic president, which would be in the final year, also known as the election year for that president. And if said president has to like bomb Iran again, then we repeat this whole Strait of Hormuz process, and it ends up really bad for them, which likely then would mean that Republicans would win the election after that one, the 2032 election. So that, from the U.S.'s angle, is almost certainly the reason why 5 years was specifically specified in this case. Uh, Throat's starting to hurt. Let me drink some water. Then we'll talk about all of the insider trading that everyone in the Trump administration has been doing based off of the current stuff. So before there's a pattern that's been tracked before each different thing that's happened throughout the war, throughout the last 3 weeks, that's either spiked the price on the market, not the real price, but the market betting price, basically, or caused it to crash. Right before, literally hours before each event, each big strike or each announcement, it's been noticed that there have been sudden multi-billion-dollar bets, either longs or shorts, which is when you bet, basically, you gamble on the stock market, betting that either oil or some other commodity is about to spike in price or about to plunge in price. And there have been quote unquote anonymous bets that have been suddenly placed right before each event that always happen to coincide in that always happen to get it right, and thus get payouts of many more billions from the market from making a successful bet. So I really hope I don't have to explain what's happening in that regard. That's hopefully really obvious to anyone with an IQ above 1. Also, in some other random news, I think it was Houston specifically, uh, since that's where most of it is, anyways. If not Houston, then it was probably Galveston or Dallas. But a large refinery, Valero refinery, exploded yesterday. It's about 450,000 barrels per day of refining capacity that is offline for at least the next few months. The reason it exploded was because of uh, improperly maintained heat exchanger units. As the company operating it has been doing uh, delayed or deferred maintenance. Uh, the thing that in the U.S. is technically it's only illegal for airlines and the electricity industry to do. Everyone else can still do that. A lot of them lie about it, but a lot of them technically they're still legally allowed to do that. They've been doing deferred maintenance, which is when instead of checking and replacing things like, say, you have to replace some type of unit every 3 months, you start doing it every 4 months. Then you start doing it every 5 months for cost cutting measures so that you can have better looking margins so that your reports look better and thusly you get more investor finance influx because that's what the current global economy has turned into. As I reiterate my point in a video I made several years ago, that cost me a number of Finance Bro viewers, apparently, because they got personally offended. Shareholders and stock investors and the stock market as a whole is actually endangering human civilization because it's now causing this cyclic mentality, this cannibalistically cyclic mentality of companies constantly avoiding maintenance, cutting things, uh, avoiding opening new like mining operations or oil fields because those are big upfront investments. And thus they look bad on the report because it looks like you spent a huge amount of money. And instead, oil companies, for example, have just been buying each other to make it look like a big, value acquisition. Our equity value went up, which looks nice to the finance bros, who then pour investor money into you buying your stocks, which inflates your value, which the investor inflow is now, for many industries, starting to turn into the actual primary form of like revenue and value gain for them. And also, even in cases where that's not entirely the case, it's still being done by like individual CEOs and board members because they're only there for 2 years. They do all this destructive nonsense, cannibalistic nonsense to pump the values so that they can then cash out on those values when they retire after a arduous 2 year career, and they can make off with their billions, or in some cases, if they're really poor, only hundreds of millions. And then the next CEO comes in and we keep repeating this process. So no one is actually trying to maintain or do industry or do manufacturing or even do business. Everyone is now, the whole economy is just getting turned into gambling and pump and dump schemes, which is, from instance like this and from various supply deficits and contractions, like in silver, especially, as many new silver mines actually could have been opened, but a lot of the mining companies have been just doing the finance acquisition stuff to inflate their portfolio value to attract investor dollars instead of actually starting new projects, despite how high silver prices are going. So, this is actually entering the period where it's starting to endanger the functionality of civilization itself. But no one's interested in stopping this because everyone, including regular working people, like regular working class people, are convinced that they can get in on it and they're gonna win the big one, and that they'll just make enough money to where the consequences won't actually like come after them, even though you still live in physical reality. So actually, they will come for you. And even if you get to that end of world stuff and you live in your like millionaire Mark Zuckerberg Hawaiian bunker, uh, the issue has been brought up repeatedly. How will you hold off? How will you keep us, the hordes of peasants, out? And, then someone like billionaire fanboys will bring up that they'll just have guards. But why would the guards stay loyal to Mark Zuckerberg for this particular example? Like, why? They could just turn on him and take the stuff. Like the idea of guards, like with any other job, is that they would do the job because you're paying them. But what are you paying them in this civilization has buckled out from under us scenario? Yeah. Okay, let's see. A few other things. Some Ukraine developments. Ukraine continues pushing back the front line in the Donetsk area and is starting to use actual close air support, ground attack support, as that was, to the surprise of no one, the reason why, after not really going after Russian air defense systems for months, they suddenly started explicitly going after the air defense systems in that general area, uh, minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day for the last few weeks, and took out like close to 30. So Russia, whoever is actually militarily in charge at the moment, not Putin, but the ones in the military making decisions at the moment, whoever it is actually intelligent, unlike several of the previous ones. And as they, actually kind of realized what was probably happening, and so they started rushing in other air defense assets uh, into the area, which have now been getting struck and destroyed. But Ukraine, after reversing the direction and beginning to push the front line back, Russia start for the first time in a while risked using attack helicopters at the front again to try to stall any advances, which has resulted in the downing over the last week or week and a half, rather, of three Ka-52s, or the Black Sharks, the one with the two rotors. Instead of a rotor and a tail rotor, it has the two rotors on the stack. Let's see, well, is there anything else? What else do we have? Oh, yeah, some supply constraints uh, upcoming potentially, unless, again, the peace agreement is actually real. Uh, be wary of particularly Ziploc bag shortages potentially, as a lot of those are made in Thailand, and those that aren't import their plastic from Thai plastic manufacturers. And the Thai plastic industry has dialed down dramatically because they're having issues getting hands on the raw materials, that obviously, because their primary source of oil is usually the Persian Gulf. But if things do simmer down, then they should be able to get back on that pretty soon. And even if they don't, the high prices, demand destruction, easing the deficit will also allow them to start getting in on some of the permitted shipments and or the shipments that are just coming out from the west coast of Saudi Arabia. But might be a brief period, a few weeks, couple months, where you might suddenly see some shortages on Ziploc bags and maybe some plastic shopping bags in some stores. So if you don't already just carry your own bags, whether they're the reusable kind or whether they're literally regular plastic shopping bags that you just take back to the store and reuse, now would be definitely a time to start getting into that. Trash bags are mostly made in the US, for US trash bags at least, so those should be fine. Uh, Shopping bags, the plastic shopping bags are kind of split. Some are made in the US, some are made in China, some are made in Thailand. Ziploc bags, specifically though, whether gallon sized or the little snack bags, those are pretty heavily concentrated in Thailand. That's another one of those very weird, awkward monopoly cases, kind of like how Mexico has like a really weird manufacturing monopoly, not a real monopoly, but like a really weird, bizarre choice is more like a that's like the comment you would make of a huge swath of all the different brands and types of pens are made in Mexico. So for Thailand, it has a similar like weird semi-monopoly. In their case, it's Ziploc bags. Versus some countries that have complete monopolies, like Ireland, for example, uh, all the Viagra in the world and its generic equivalents, they're all made in Ireland. Apparently, Ireland has the monopoly on Viagra pills. I don't know why Ireland you've decided that's what you wanted a monopoly on, but you have one. Okay, let's see. Uh, Oh, only two more things then. That is the Primorsk terminal up in Leningrad or the Leningrad region. The In this particular case, the offloading infrastructure, pipelines and stuff were not hit, but it was the various fuel tanks, storage tanks, as when the oil comes in to the area through the national pipeline network. It obviously has to be stored in the massive tanks before then being loaded and directed to different ships. So capacity for active storage there has indeed been drastically reduced, as quite a bit is burning, and some of it you can see from past strikes is already burnt. And I think that's basically it. Yeah, I don't have anything else on the list. So unless anything comes up from anybody in chat, regular super chat or otherwise, then that's probably going to be it for this one. So I'll wait like 30 seconds or a minute for the broadcast delay while I drink some water. Yeah, if you got here late, you missed anything, it's, accessible. Obviously, you can just scroll back to earlier portions. Not at the beginning, you can skip the first few minutes, because that's me talking about stuff no one wants to hear about. But yeah, it doesn't look like anything's coming up, so that's going to be it